Hello again, everyone. How was the history lesson on the REINS Act? All right. My name is Emily Greene. I serve as State Director with Americans for Prosperity, Pennsylvania. And to put simply, we have this radical idea at AFP that you can probably spend your money better than the government can, and that you should probably not have government bureaucrats telling you how they're going to spend their money. Our bias is that these ladies and gentlemen should. So we are talking about regulatory reform here today, and I was told that we have 40 minutes, although I know this panel could soliloquy, Cory Booker style, on regulatory reform. So I want to introduce our esteemed panelists very quickly, and then I'm going to pass it to them to talk about their history with regulatory reform, why they're in this fight, why this is so important that we get this done soon. So first we have Senator Dawn Keefer of the 31st Senate District. Yes! She is championing small business in her role as in the state Senate, and was recently honored by City and States on their So Fresh, So Clean list because she cleans up Harrisburg, and they gave her the title of Dawn, the Red Tape Edition. So maybe we can touch on that a little bit later. Thank you, Senator.
That was a pleasant surprise. And it was about, I'm one of those legislators. It's always about less government. I think we can do it better, we can do it more efficient, and nothing drives me crazier than the government coming in to save me from myself. I come from a family of small businesses, and every Christmas is this commiseration. Well, they did this to me, and I had to do this. And then once I became a legislator, then I was the sounding board. And why can't you fix this? And why can't you do this? And do you know they showed up to do this? And I just got tired of it. My husband's a small business owner as well, and he has a custom motorcycle business. I had consulting, so I didn't have to interface too much other than just paying my taxes. But it was every ABC agency I ever and never heard of that were coming in to regulate him. And the end of the month, sometimes every other week, it felt like we were just arguing with one another because I was going through the pile of paperwork he had to comply with, right? And it shouldn't be that hard to do business in general, whether it's in Pennsylvania or anywhere else, but we are one of the most business unfriendly states, in my opinion, that we have. We are closed for business, and it's pretty sad now when even Maryland is beating us. Before, it was everybody was coming to Pennsylvania from Maryland. Now, even Maryland's beating us. We have to do something better, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have basic health and safety standards or rules in place, but it goes so far above and beyond. So I would tell you, my uncle was a small grocer, had a grocery store, and he took WIC, right? Because we want access and we want to help our community, so he took WIC. And it was all these different rules every time they were coming in, pinging him for compliance. And the last one he had where he just lost it, he makes me look very mild and cuddly, actually. And he said, they came in and they said, oh, well, sorry, Mr. Wetzel, but you don't have the variety of meat that is required for WIC. And he said, right, because it's 11 o'clock and my meat vendor shows up on Wednesdays at 2. And he got pinged for it. He's like, well, here's what we're gonna do, and then you can do this to remediate it. He says, here's what you can do. Get your sticker, get it off my door, and get out of my store. I don't need this, right? But who does that hurt? That hurts that community, right? It hurts us. There's no reason it has to be that way. And to what end? Who are we saving ourselves from, right? Right now, I've been fighting with PLCB, a lot of our bars and restaurants, and you want to talk about punitive that we have there. I have one of my bars that's been operating on a conditional operating license for 15 years. Every time they meet one standard, they put another, ping them with something else. And this is something like, oh, well, they were operating without a health license because it had expired the day before. Right? And during COVID, guess who wasn't open? The Department of Health, right? So it's that kind of crazy stuff, and people have just had enough. So my bill, the REINS Act that I have, is any regulation, which is a rule made up by one of these ABC agencies that has an impact on Pennsylvania, whether it's state or private, in the public sector or private sector, of $1 million or greater. And I have the independent fiscal office determine that $1 million has to go through both the House and the Senate on a concurrent resolution before it can go into effect, right? That way you, as the taxpayers, can come back, you have somebody to hold accountable versus some bureaucrat that you didn't elect right? And so as I was digging into this more, I've had that passed out of the House almost every session except for last when we had gone into the minority. And my colleague in the Senate at the time, John DeSanto, has got it out of the Senate each time, but we never got it over the finish line. And as I dug into it, I kept saying, you know what? This isn't just the administration's fault that we've gotten here. It's a legislative issue as well, because we write these broad rules or broad policies, and then we punt to the executive, right? So we're allowing these guys to define and determine what those rules are. And it's a dereliction of duty. And the reason, why do we do that? Well, we don't want to be responsible, right? So when you come to me and you're mad about DEP, I can say, oh, they're terrible, terrible. I can't believe they did it. But we wrote the policy so vague, we gave them the opportunity to do it. And one of my examples I have as the best example is, Kristin, you and I worked, my first budget I ever had in the General Assembly, we had a $1.5 billion deficit. We scoured through all the special funds. We determined, we were sitting on $12 billion end fund balance, year over year, $12 billion, and we couldn't find this $1.5 billion. So we'd gone through every single special fund. There were over 180. These are funds that sit outside of our general fund. And it was a long summer, and we got into the fall, and finally we got an agreement to take $350 million out of those funds. And everybody was great, and I said, here's the list. Here are the funds that you want to take from, right? And they said, oh, no. We'll let the governor decide which funds. I said, no. You know what funds he'll take, ones that squeeze us in rural areas, right, that have less populations. No, we should define which funds to take out of. I lost that battle. What the governor did is he created a new special fund and borrowed the money against the farm shell, put that up as collateral. So we have a $30 million annual payment, or $13 million annual payment that we make for that. And basically what we said was, not fair, right? And that is why we have to legislate. That is what we were elected to do. And getting this in place would allow you to hold your elected officials accountable.
Yes. Senator, how would implementing REINS Act here in Pennsylvania make us more competitive with other states? Tell us about the landscape.
So it would actually provide predictability. And that is one of the things, it's all the unknowns in this Commonwealth, right? So if you're a business and you're looking to locate here, and you know that that bureaucrats run, have full reign of the state with limited capacity of your legislature, or that you're going to, even if, let's just say your legislator has the ability to do something, that's all time, and time is money. So when you don't have that predictability as a business, and I'm looking at Ohio versus Pennsylvania, I'm going to Ohio, right? We have West Virginia's eating our lunch now. West Virginia's eating our lunch, right? There's no reason. We are ripe with opportunities and resources in this Commonwealth, and there's no reason we shouldn't be number one in this country.
I agree. Thank you, Senator. Now, the Senate can get to work tomorrow, if they so chose, to make sure that we're passing comprehensive regulatory reform. And I know everyone in this room is very familiar with DOGE, right? Can I get a round of applause? Well, our next panelist was DOGE before DOGE. So we have Senator Kristin Phillips-Hill, representing the 28th Senatorial District. She is in her second term, elected in 2018, and serves as the Senate Majority Caucus Chair. So Senator, thank you for being here. Thank you for being excited about regulatory reform. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you.
Well, I'm very excited about regulatory reform. I'm so grateful that you are all here today. You are engaging with us. It's Saturday morning. You could be so many other places, but you're here because you care, and I'm so grateful for that. Over-regulation, it crushes job growth. Over-regulation is a form of excessive taxation, and over-regulation inhibits our great opportunities. And we're competing. Senator Keefer told you, we are competing. We're competing for our taxpayers. We are competing against other states, and we are competing against other nations. There are many nations that have smaller GDP than Pennsylvania. And what are we going to do about it? And believe it or not, before I ever became a legislator, I sat down with a local business owner who had been out to Kansas and said, you can't imagine the great work that they're doing out there. They are going through all of their regulations and they are eliminating anything that makes them inefficient, ineffective, anything that's outdated, duplicative. Wow, that's amazing. And guess what? We have seen these efforts pay dividends in other states, at the federal level, and even in other countries. Why can't we do that in Pennsylvania? Well, in large part because how many times have we been told, you know, this is the way we've always done it. Boy, if there is a term in government that just puts the hackles up on the back of my neck, it's that very one. Now, I know this is a divisive issue here in the Commonwealth, but there are several football teams that people cheer for. And the one out of the eastern part of the state, they lost in 2022. Did they do everything the same? Absolutely not. You know what they said? We need to change up our roster. We need to put in some new plays. Oh, and we need to really work hard. And what happened? The Lombardi Trophy came back to Pennsylvania in 2025. Even if you're a Steelers fan, you gotta love that. That's exactly what we are trying to do. And we can do it. The great part about the REINS Act is it's gonna keep everything clean and moving in the right direction. But folks, according to the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, about 6-8 years ago, they said we had over 153,000 regulations on the book. Most recently, they said we had over 164,000 regulations on our book. And it's not for a lack of effort of the many legislators who are sitting in this audience today or who are sitting here. We have tried to go after those very regulations, but they just continue to grow. And we need to clean them out so that the REINS Act can go into effect. So it's really simple. Through the Transparency and Accountability Reform Act, we are going to create a Department of Government Efficiency here in Pennsylvania. It's going to last for 5 years. Let's hear it. Yes? And we are going to systematically go through all of these regulations that are inhibiting our growth, inhibiting our economic opportunity, and it impacts not just businesses, individuals, nonprofits, local governments. You talk to anybody in the trenches of local government, and they will tell you that state and federal regulations can be crushing to try and keep the roads paved and the municipality working for the people. So we're going to go through them all, and we're going to make recommendations, and then it's the legislature's job to get rid of them. And then we're going to implement the REINS Act. But I want you to know this as well. For every new regulation that we put into effect, there are provisions in this bill that says 2 need to go away. And lastly, we are going to put in a regulatory compliance officer. So what does that mean? Well, it means this. We're from the government, and we are here to help. And you laugh, but this truly is what a regulatory compliance officer is about. We're going to clean up the books. We're going to make sure that we don't over-regulate in the future. And those regulations that remain are important, and we need them to stand. We don't need gotcha moments. We don't need to punish people. We don't need to use regulations as a form of taxation to raise money when we find people out of compliance. If they're important, we want you to comply. And we want somebody there who is going to help you comply. And that's what that regulatory compliance officer is going to be about. I will tell you this. Senator Keefer and I are from York County. Everybody knows the history. York County is the very place where government red tape was first manufactured. And I kid you not, the tape that bound those federal regulations was made at the York Narrows Fabric Company, right in York County. How appropriate that you've got 2 legislators from York standing up here telling you we're finally going to cut it. And when we cut it, we're going to roll out the red carpet because we want to be open for business. Now, I can't finish our conversation without telling the story. And if you've all heard this, I'm sorry, but I am going to repeat myself because Emily says this story is emblematic of why we fight so hard for regulatory reform here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Dear friend, constituent, entrepreneur, business owner comes to me and says, KPH, I can't do it anymore. What do you mean? And he says to me, he said, you know, I went to West Virginia, and there I can get a permit, build, open, and operate a new hotel in the same time that it takes me to just get a permit here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He left. He's in North Carolina. He's doing business up and down the East Coast. And with him not only went a good friend, but a lot of jobs, a lot of economic opportunity. And that's why we fight. I think of him, I think of those jobs, I think of all the people that it impacted, and it is so important that we continue to endeavor down this path. I get it, it's not always glamorous, it's not always headline grabbing, but this is the important work that we can do together to make Pennsylvania prosper in the future.
Thank you, Senator. I love that story, and unfortunately, when I did have the chance to meet that constituent, I know, it's really emblematic of why we do the work that we do. And I had the opportunity to sit down with that constituent of yours as he was moving to Raleigh, North Carolina, and introduce him to my colleague in North Carolina and say, here's Pennsylvania's best, enjoy it. But that is the case with many other states. We are losing our top talent, which is why we need to continue to fight for regulatory reform. And as you said, cut the red tape, but also roll out the red carpet. So I love that. Fantastic. Thank you, Senator. And last but certainly not least, we have Representative Dallas Kephart of the 73rd Legislative District in Clearfield County. He is a multi-generational Pennsylvanian. He is a licensed attorney. And fun fact, I learned backstage that one of the reasons why he ran for office is to pass the REINS Act, which is just amazing. Thank you for that.
True story.
And tell us a little bit about how you first got introduced to Senator Mike Lee. This is a great story too.
Yeah, so back at, about 10 years ago or so, I was reading this book by Senator Mike Lee, actually, Our Lost Constitution, and I always was interested in taking on the administrative state. And in this book, he was talking about that, a lot of the stuff he talked about on the screen, actually. And then he came forward with this piece. I was reading about one of his solutions to solve these problems was passing the REINS Act. And I was like, all right, what's this REINS Act? You know, so I look it up, and it's like him and Rand Paul and all these great guys are championing this issue. I'm like, this is a great idea. We can hold legislators accountable instead of, like the senator said, of just saying, oh, it wasn't me, it was DEP that did this role. No, we're going to have legislators be accountable, and then they can go back to their constituents and explain whether they voted yes or no for a particular regulation. Like Senator Keefer said, hey, there may be some health and safety regulations that are needed, no doubt. But a lot of these are unneeded, unnecessary regulations that are crushing businesses and individuals back home, and it's killing, especially areas like mine. You know, we're a very heavy energy district. Coal, gas, oil. I guess we have wind and solar too now, but you know, anyhow, it's it's killing my area, and this is a very important issue because then, you know, so many times people in the coal business, for instance, will be like, hey, what are you doing here? You know, DEP's doing this and that, and I'm like, yep, they have every single regulatory power out there because, like Senator Keefer said, we've delegated all this power to them. This is a way to put us back in charge and get legislators on the record, because that is very important for political accountability. We are the closest thing to you, and that you can hold us in check at the ballot box, and I think it's very critical.
Absolutely. And I'd also like to plug, if you haven't seen the Americans for Prosperity table outside, we have a legislative scorecard, which we put out every single year, where you can hold your member of the state legislature accountable to their votes. We have 3 great members who are A-rated, but you know, maybe you're in a district where that isn't the case. Maybe your member has a B or a C. These are tools that you can use to hold members accountable, but also have a conversation. We believe that that transparency and that knowledge will allow you to have better conversations with your representation and allow for better policy. So had to plug the legislative scorecard. Feel free to grab one of these at the table outside. But you talked a little bit about energy. If we were to implement the REINS Act, what does that mean for policies such as the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative?
Yeah, so the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, for those that don't know, is basically a cap and trade program implemented by, or tried to be implemented by Governor Wolf. I guess King Wolf, over the years with COVID and everything else, he proclaimed his edicts upon us. But, this is another one of those unilateral things that's totally not legal. I mean, it was ruled unconstitutional at the Commonwealth Court, but now has been appealed by Governor Shapiro, so he owns it now. And basically, it's a cap and trade, about $800 million tax on Pennsylvania industry. Homer City's not very far from mine, and I'm glad we're getting to get the AI plant there now. But, that was one place that's going to get hammered by it. Conemaugh Power Plant just down the road from there. I mean, like I said, my district is heavily in, energy dominant area, or could be. We also have cogen plants in my area and so forth. So we have a power plant, and like these areas are going to get, just killed by all these regulations unnecessarily. It's again, Reggie, I always tell even the environmentalists this. I said, do you care about pollution? Oh, okay. Well, just so you know, this does not regulate sulfur dioxide, methane, nothing. It's literally carbon dioxide. That's the only thing it regulates. But it's totally unconstitutional because it wouldn't pass through the legislature. In fact, before I got up there, they put a resolution through, and I think it got like 130 votes to end it. Well, the thing is, there wasn't 130 Republicans in the House, so it was bipartisan opposition to it. So, a lot of the, Labor Democrats opposed it too. So it's bipartisan opposition to this thing. It's killing, we're preventing, since that's been, proposed, I don't believe we have built a power plant in this state.
Correct.
I mean, that is a huge problem and also, the natural gas, they will be affected by this too. So it is just going to kill our area drastically. That is a big problem. Plus, as I said, DEP comes out with a litany of issues all the time. Right now they're at the EQB. We got petitioners, saying that we should be setbacks at 2,500 feet and so forth. And what that would do is basically ban natural gas drilling in the state, 90% of the area. We actually voted no in that committee last year. It's in statute that it's 500 feet, but they think they're going to regulate to 2,500 feet potentially. I mean, that would be a huge problem. And if you're up in Susquehanna County, that's one of the largest gas producing counties in the country, really. That would kill that area. My area with coal, gas there. If you're up in the Northwest, it would definitely hammer you up there as well. So this state is energy dominant, and we can be energy dominant, but we got to get things like Reggie out of the way and if you think it's a great idea, I always tell them this, then why don't you pass it through the legislature? Go ahead and put it up for a vote. You'll find out that you have bipartisan opposition because it's going to kill jobs in this state. So, and by the way, an $800 million tax, you know where it's going to come from? Everybody in here that buys electricity, which is almost all of us. So, you can blame the electric companies and this and that. And it's going to also, I would mention that it's going to make the grid reliability go down, and they can say, oh, well, Maryland and New Jersey, they import their electricity from us. So, we'll continue to lose jobs from Ohio because they won't be part of it. We're going to suffocate ourselves. It's just a really stupid thing, Reggie is. But the RAINS Act would help rein that in some, no pun intended. Again, that just makes us accountable. That's an $800 million tax. All we're asking for is a $1 million regulation. So it would be great to get implemented.
Thank you. I totally agree. Wouldn't it be great if all of us in this room had more of a say over these decisions that are being made for us? And that's why it's so important that we have legislative oversight. So I'm sure everyone in this room, as like-minded individuals, are listening to this and saying, this all sounds great. So how do we do this? My question is for Senator Keefer and Representative Kephart. When it comes to RAINS, we know we are working through very divided government. How can we get this done?
So again, it's holding your legislator accountable. So calling them. And you should be having conversations with your legislator more than just do this or don't do that. They work for you. So you should be reaching out and having conversations with your legislator. Just, hey, where do you stand on the RAINS Act? Do you know? Do you know where your legislator stands? Do they support it? And if they do support it, shoot me an email and say, hey, I spoke to Senator Smith and they support they told me they support the REINS Act, right? I tally all that. I keep that as I'm whipping the votes for myself. So I go to my leadership and say, hey, let's run this bill. We have the support for it, right? It's rubber hits the road. It's you holding your legislators accountable. And this really should not be a partisan issue. You know, our economic growth, the vitality of our Commonwealth, our biggest import is old people. No offense to anybody, right? But we're losing all of our jobs, our businesses, our talents. We educate more students than almost any other state in the nation, and we lose them too. That's crazy. We're right here. We are the Keystone State for a reason. And we should be keeping all of those individuals. So call your legislators, ask them where they stand on this, and let us know. Shoot myself or Representative Kephart an email and let us know the conversations that you're having. But that's the only way we're going to get this done.
Yeah. Coincidentally, she said that was our biggest import. I would argue that our biggest export is people my age and younger.
That's your biggest export, yeah.
That's our biggest export in the state. You know, I said that back home when I was campaigning originally a few years ago. I said, that's our biggest export. We get all these people graduating from high school, college, whatever, and out the door they go. They go to, I could name you so many people I went to high school with. They're in Florida, Texas, Carolina, you know, and it's just like, what are we doing here? You know, there's no jobs for them to stay and, you know, no opportunity. That's what happens. So, you know, in the House, we're facing a bigger uphill battle. You know, a few years ago, we lost the control of the House, and now the Democrats are in charge. And it's definitely an uphill battle. But this is something that should transcend party lines, accountability at the ballot box. But of course, that is why we need the REINS Act, is accountability. But I will tell you that politicians, one of the things they don't want to do is take accountability. That's why they punted it to all these people. That way they can say, oh no, it wasn't me. So, you know, being accountable means you have to stand at the ballot box and explain yourself. So that is sort of we're for that, but I don't know if everybody's for that. That's unfortunately, you know, their biggest thing is getting reelected and self-preservation, I guess. But, you know, so in the House, we're gonna have to work on it some, you know, and hopefully in 2 years, you know, we could get it back, you know, the House. So you know, we're only one seat away in the House, so it's really close. So, you know, that's our biggest obstacle, obviously. Luckily, we have the Senate. We could get it moved out of there, but getting it out of the House is definitely going to be the most challenge. You know, I always joke with people back home when they had a guy call me the other day about a regulation, actually, and he said, well, how long would it take to get this passed? And I said, buddy, it took like a couple months to get like a World Cup thing passed, let alone, you know, and that was with a high priority center and stuff like this, you know, this could take years. He goes, really? And I said, yeah, government moves at the speed of molasses. So it's just, you know, that's what we're up against. But it is important to keep championing it, keep moving it forward. Like Senator Keefer said, reach out to your representative, regardless of Republican, Democrat, have that conversation, you know, and then, you know, the more we get information out there about what this is, the easier it will be to develop a law.
My question is for all three of our panelists. Whoever wants to take this, please be my guest. For those listening, we've talked about unelected bureaucrats, and of course the Constitution outlines 3 separate branches of government. However, we've also addressed that there's a 4th unsanctioned, pesky, unofficial branch of government, which is the administrative state. But how does the administrative state relate to our esteemed Governor Josh Shapiro? How can we hold Josh Shapiro accountable through comprehensive regulatory reform in the REINS Act?
How do we hold him accountable? So, well, first of all, let's do remember that he has a media, right, that just loves him. Doesn't matter what he does. He's got, you know, they are in his pocket. I mean, he could vote yes for Reggie, or, you know, or that court case could go through, and he's championing it. And remember, Josh Shapiro, when he ran for governor, said that he did not support Reggie, but then he intervened and took the case up and is appealing Reggie. So remember, he does have the media in his pocket, and they would champion that as something good, or, you know, they would spin that. So getting past the narrative, I have a lot of family in Maryland, and they will say, well, he's doing this or he's doing that. He is not. Right? Look at your news media sources. And so every time that he's doing something like this lightning plan he has, this is what's going to bring back energy in Pennsylvania. It is green energy fantasy land. That's what it is. $100 million tax credits to energy producers. $100 million. So he's going to take my money, your money, right, and dole it out to these different corporations. Listen, we know already how to get energy going in Pennsylvania. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. That's all we have to do. And our energy would take off leaps and bounds. Every sector could do it. Just let them compete fairly. Stop taking my money and giving it to my competitor to compete against me. So that's got to be the first thing. But it's. I think we are holding him more and more accountable, and it's voicing those things. When he just put out something yesterday that said, "I cut taxes for senior citizens over the past 2 years." Raise your hand, senior citizens, if you received a tax credit or tax cut from the governor. Right? Exactly. I saw exactly none. Exactly none. So it's that kind of thing. I'm not letting him get away with it. When I see him, post those kind of things, I'm sharing it. And that's what I put out there. I said, please let me know. Please respond to me if you have received a tax credit from this governor.
We've all served in the House. Before she was Senator Keefer, she was Representative Keefer. Before I was a senator, I was a representative too. And there's one verse of scripture in the State House. It's from the book of John, and it says, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." That is what we do. We need you to help us amplify the message. Call it out. The governor who professes to be so transparent and so accountable has hid emails from a sexual harassment case in his own administration. He's not being transparent or accountable. They somehow just can't find them. Well, you know what? We've got to call that out. We have a governor who professes to be energy savvy, and he's going to unleash energy in the Commonwealth. Do you know what that means in my district? The energy fantasy land that he lives in means that people in my district will have their land taken out from under them by eminent domain to build a battery so that when those poor people who refuse to do what is right by their constituents down in Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia need a little extra energy so they don't have a brownout, they can come and release that energy from the over 1,000 acres of land that they have taken in my district. He had the audacity to come into your county and say, look how wonderful I am, and look at all these great things. You tell that to the people whose farms, businesses, and homes will be taken out from under them. We cannot support what he is doing. We have to speak up and speak out. There has been nothing transparent nor accountable about this governor, whatever issue it would be, whether it's regulatory issues, energy issues, the issues of sexual harassment, and making sure that women are respected and valued in the workplace. We could go on and on and on. But it's on all of us to speak out, to speak truth to power, and let everybody know your help with amplifying that message when we put it out is so appreciated and so needed.
Yeah, I would also say I'm not sure what this governor's doing. He says he's doing all these great things. All I see him doing is putting out 3 press releases a day and campaigning place to place. Or I guess he takes his plane occasionally, but that we can't get the flight logs of. But anyhow, yeah. So I guess we have that about him. This guy goes around. I remember it was 2 days before the budget, and my local media person back home in the newspaper, luckily she's one on the conservative side, anyhow, and she said, hey, the governor's up here. Do you have any questions for him? I said, I think you think I should ask him? I said, yeah, ask him why he's in Phillipsburg instead of Harrisburg with the budget due in 2 days. I mean, this guy, that's all he does is campaign, place to place. I mean, just follow it. I mean, he just literally campaigns every single day. So he's doing nothing down here. He's not doing his actual job. What is he doing? He's campaigning for, 2026 and then 2028. He wants to be the president. So that's all he's caring about. Just, he's got Obama's speech coach to coach him up on how to speak properly. And, I mean, this guy is just a chameleon. It depends where he's at, what he says. So anyhow, we need to hold this governor accountable, in my opinion. And, that starts next year at the ballot box, so hopefully we can get him there. But
and one more thing on the budget that he just proposed this year. If that budget would pass, right, that would mean, right, if we were actually spending our revenues, that would require a 54% tax increase to cover that spend. 54%. I think it's about a 7% increase in the budget, but we already have over a $3 billion structural deficit in our budget, meaning we spend I think it's 3.6 billion more than we bring in revenue. So you don't bring in enough. And now he wants to spend even more. So it's about another $3 billion I think he has from last year's spending. It's coming from somewhere. So how at the same time that you're promoting a budget with that kind of additional spending, with a lack of revenues, are you claiming to be doing tax cuts? He's taking it for somebody, right? Somebody's getting a tax cut, but it's not us.
Well, I'm going to bring it all back, if I can, Emily, because one of the things that we need to remember, and the reason that we're here talking to you today, is regulatory reform and overregulation. Overregulation consumes, according to the World Bank, not exactly a bastion of conservatism, it consumes between 0.8 and 2.3% of all of our economic growth. So now we have a governor that is proposing to spend, I believe it's 7.5% more than last year, far above the rate of inflation, with no realistic or reasonable way to pay for it other than taxes that don't even exist today. And we have a regulatory state that's consuming significant amounts of our economic growth. That is why we fight. That is why we need you in this fight. That's the message that has to be sent. And clearly, you know, he's using the state plane and state helicopters as his private airlines. You can check into that. Senator Coleman
Senator Coleman
has it posted. You can track his flights there. You know, we have raised this issue with the governor's office of self-promotion. Tom Wolf had 12 people in his communications department. Josh Shapiro has 26. We get it. We know what's going on here. So again, it's on all of us. Communicate with your legislators. Let them know this is why we have to fight.
Well, thank you, panelists, so much for leading on regulatory reform. I know this is not an issue that's top of mind all the time for folks in this room, but it is the most important. Regulatory barriers touch every single part of our lives, and we just want to make Pennsylvania more free, more prosperous, and we can do that through comprehensive regulatory reform and by making it rain through the REINS Act. So I want to thank you all so much for your participation. Head over to our Americans for Prosperity booth, grab your legislative scorecard, and thank you, panelists, again. Let's get regulatory reform done this year.